They were building a school, a place meant for children, for learning, for the future. But when the excavators broke ground in a quiet Frankfurt neighborhood, they didn't find soil and stone. They found walls, ancient walls, then rooms, then altars, then something that made the archaeologists stop cold. At the bottom of a sealed well, undisturbed for nearly 1,800 years, they found a bronze goddess, a soldier's dedication to a forgotten god, and a human skeleton. What was it doing there? If you're drawn to the moments when history reaches up through the earth and grabs you by the collar, you're in the right place. Hit subscribe and stay with us. This one goes deep. Frankfurt, Germany, a modern city, glass towers, busy streets, the hum of contemporary life layered over something far older. Beneath the northwest district of Hetternheim lies what was once called Nida, a Roman city that rose from a military outpost in the 70s CE into one of the most significant urban centers in all of Roman Germania. A city of trade, soldiers, priests, and pilgrims. A city that by the late 3rd century simply vanished. For centuries, Nida slept beneath the city, forgotten, unexamined. Then, between 2016 and 2018, and again in 2022, construction crews preparing the ground for the new Römer Stadtschule, the Roman City School, began to dig. The Frankfurt Monument Office deployed archaeologists to monitor the work. Standard procedure. Routine. What they found was anything but. Over more than 4,500 square meters at the very heart of ancient Nida, they uncovered a sacred district unlike anything previously documented in the Roman provinces of Germania or Gaul. Not a single temple, not a modest shrine, a sprawling, multi-building cult complex, deliberately designed, elaborately decorated, and filled with the physical traces of rituals performed across more than a century. Dr. Karsten Wenzel, curator of provincial Roman archaeology at the Archaeological Museum Frankfurt, described the moment plainly. The discovery of Nida's sacred district came as a remarkable surprise. That is archaeologists for. We were not prepared for this. Picture this. You're standing in a construction trench in a German city. It's a gray morning. And then, emerging from the earth, you begin to see foundations. Stone, deliberate, structured. Not one building, 11. 11 stone structures, built in phases over generations, forming a walled sacred precinct at the center of a Roman city. The walls of these buildings once carried painted plaster, and more than 5,000 fragments of that plaster survived. Brilliant colors, decorated interiors. These weren't crude provincial chapels. They were sacred spaces built to impress, to awe, to communicate the power of the divine. Bronze door fittings, bronze window hardware, the physical remnants of doors that once opened onto something considered holy. Then come the objects. 254 Roman coins, many bearing religious imagery on their reverse sides. Among them, an exceptionally rare coin minted in 88 CE under Emperor Domitian, commemorating the Ludi Seculares, the sacred centennial games. Almost certainly placed deliberately. A chosen gift to the gods. More than 70 fibulae, garment clasps made of silver and bronze, some perfectly intact. One of them hexagonal, enameled to resemble a Roman military shield. Across the empire, fibulae like these appear again and again at sacred sites. Personal objects, offerings, things people removed from their own bodies and gave away to something they believed was listening. 70 shafts and 10 pits were found distributed across the complex. Inside them, ceramic vessels, animal bones, fish remains, bird bones, charred plant material. The layered, compressed residue of ritual meals. Offerings consumed in the presence of gods, the remnants deposited with care. Archaeologists have collected around 150 samples for archaeozoological and archaeobotanical analysis. They are still being studied. The picture is still forming. And then there is the well. At the bottom of one sealed well, investigators found 3 things together. A bronze statuette of Diana, goddess of nature and the hunt. A dedicatory inscription to Mercurius Aletheus, dated precisely to September 9th, 246 C. left by a soldier of the 22nd Legion stationed in Mainz. And a human skeleton. 3 things. 1 sealed space. No clear explanation. Here's what we know about Roman religion. The Romans were, by the standards of the ancient world, relatively squeamish about human sacrifice. They documented it in their enemies, the Gauls, the Carthaginians, the Germanic tribes. They banned it within their own borders as early as 97 BCE. Officially, formally, legislatively, human sacrifice was not Roman practice. And yet, the researchers studying Nida have used careful, measured academic language. They speak of unusual indications, of evidence that may point to human sacrifice, of a phenomenon entirely exceptional in the Roman context. The German Research Foundation and Swiss National Science Foundation, serious scientific institutions, have jointly awarded more than €1 million to investigate this site over the next 3 years. Part of that investigation will focus specifically on understanding what happened in that well. A skeleton does not automatically mean sacrifice. It could mean many things: a burial, an accident, a secondary deposit, a body moved from elsewhere. Science does not jump to conclusions. But here is what makes the Nida find genuinely unusual: the context. A sealed ritual space. Sacred objects placed with evident intention. A date-stamped inscription confirming active religious use. And in the middle of all of it, human remains. Why is a skeleton at the bottom of a sacred well, alongside a goddess figurine and a soldier's prayer? That question does not yet have an answer. The research project, now underway, brings together teams from the Archaeological Museum Frankfurt, Goethe University Frankfurt, covering classical archaeology, provincial Roman archaeology, and archaeobotany, and the University of Basel's Institute for Integrative Prehistoric and Scientific Archaeology. Their work will focus on 2 core questions: what rituals were practiced here, and for whom? On the question of the skeleton, several interpretations remain open. The first is the most straightforward. The human remains represent a burial that has no ritual significance. Bodies were sometimes deposited in wells in the Roman world for practical or logistical reasons entirely unrelated to religion. This is the most conservative reading and the one that requires the least explanation. The second theory is more complex. Some Roman-era sites, particularly in frontier provinces where Roman religion mixed with local Celtic and Germanic traditions, do show evidence of what scholars call structured deposits. These are deliberate, meaningful placements of objects and sometimes human remains in pits, shafts, or wells as part of ritual practice. Not necessarily sacrifice in the classical sense, but something that blurs the line between offering and interment. The third possibility, true human sacrifice as part of the cult's ritual practice, is the most dramatic and, by current evidence, the least supported. Researchers are explicit: it is not confirmed. It is a possibility that the evidence does not yet allow the team to rule out. That is all, but it is enough to make this site one of the most carefully watched digs in European archaeology. What is not in dispute? The sanctuary served multiple deities simultaneously. Jupiter Dolichinos, a god particularly favored by soldiers, combining Roman and Syrian traditions. Mercurius Aletheus. Diana, Apollo, Epona, the Celtic goddess of fertility. This is a sacred space where traditions merged, Roman, Celtic, Eastern, in a frontier city built on cultural intersection. That mixing may itself be part of the explanation for what made Nida's rituals unusual. What Nida forces us to reconsider is the simplistic picture of Roman religion as uniform, standardized, and fully documented. The Roman Empire was vast, and in its frontier provinces, far from a senate's reach and Rome's social enforcement, religious practice was far more fluid, far more syncretic, far more locally shaped than official history suggests. Soldiers from Syria worshipped alongside Gallic farmers. Celtic traditions absorbed Roman names, and Roman traditions absorbed Celtic ones. And in sacred spaces like Nida, something new was created, a regional religion that doesn't fit neatly into any category. The layout of the sanctuary itself underscores this. Researchers have confirmed that the architectural arrangement is unlike anything else documented in the Germanic or Gallic provinces. It wasn't built to a template. It evolved phase by phase across generations, shaped by the specific community that used it. That is not a footnote to Roman history. That is Roman history, the living, breathing, messy human reality of it. And if the investigation confirms that human sacrifice or ritual human deposit was practiced here, even once, even in a form we don't yet have language to describe, it will fundamentally challenge established narratives about what Roman religion permitted, what frontier communities practiced, and how much we still don't know about the ancient world lying directly beneath our feet. Think about this for a moment. For nearly 1,800 years, that well sat sealed. The skeleton inside it, the bronze goddess beside it, the soldier's inscription pressed into metal, his name and his prayer perfectly preserved in the darkness. Above it, centuries accumulated. The Roman Empire fell. The medieval world rose and fell. Frankfurt was built, bombed, rebuilt. And through all of it, the wars, the reconstruction, the relentless momentum of modern life, that sealed space waited. It took a school being built for children to open it again. There is something almost unbearably strange about that. The future breaking open the past. A place for learning built directly over a place of ancient mystery. The researchers now working on Nida's sacred district have 3 years of funded investigation ahead. Isotope analysis will be performed on the skeleton to determine who this person was, where they came from, what they ate, how they lived. The animal remains will be examined to map the patterns of ritual feasting. The painted wall plaster will be reconstructed, fragment by fragment, to reveal the visual world that worshippers entered when they stepped into these sacred buildings. Slowly, carefully, scientifically, the mystery is being opened. But some of the answers may raise harder questions than the ones we started with. A skeleton at the bottom of a sacred well. A soldier's prayer sealed in metal. An architectural complex unlike anything else in the Roman Empire. We know this much. The rest is still being uncovered. So here's what I want to ask you. If you were an archaeologist standing in that trench the moment that well was opened, what would you think you were looking at? A burial? A ritual? Something we don't yet have a name for? Leave your theory in the comments. I genuinely want to read them. And if this kind of deep, evidence-based historical mystery is what you come here for, subscribe. Because there is so much more buried out there. We're just getting started.